one of the biggest ingredients to peace in the Middle East is that they've left the issue up for Jerusalem, up for negotiations. Well, how do you negotiate something that's not negotiable?
You're listening to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman on the Land of Israel Network.
Hello and welcome to Inside Israel Today here on the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com. It is Tuesday over here in beautiful Jerusalem, and we are waiting for Wednesday when there are those who say the President of the United States will deliver a historic speech about Jerusalem. There are already reports this morning that speech might be delayed, and we're eagerly awaiting it, whether it's tomorrow or another day, because we are in the capital of Israel over here. We're very proud of it being our capital. It's been our capital for 3,000 years when Washington was a swamp. And there are a lot of capitals around the world that are clearly in the wrong place. The governor of Florida is visiting here. I don't understand why the capital of Florida is in the only ugly place in all of Florida. It makes no sense to me. There should be protests throughout Florida to get that capital out of Tallahassee and somewhere nice. There's so many wonderful places in Florida to choose from, anywhere but Tallahassee. That should be the controversy. The Palestinians should be threatening World War III if the capital of Florida is not moved. And yet, they're protesting Jerusalem. Excuse me? This was our capital long before Muhammad was born, and it will continue to be our capital. And it's time for the entire world to be recognizing that, especially one man, Donald Trump. Donald Trump promised during the campaign that he would move the embassy to Israel's capital, Jerusalem. Those were his words over and over and over again. He was elected on the basis of that promise. People here forget, people around the world forget, how Donald Trump got elected President of the United States. The reason he is President of the United States today was that he promised evangelical Christian voters in America that he would move that embassy. We Jews in America, we're not all that many people. But evangelical Christians, there are many. And for that evangelical Christian vote, Donald Trump was running against? No, not Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump was running in that election against that very comfortable bed that they didn't have to leave in order to vote. They weren't going to. I, during the campaign, gave lectures in very red states. I was in South Dakota, I was in North Dakota, spoke at a very evangelical Christian church there in South Dakota. And I had a room of 300 Christians. How many of them do you think were voting for Trump? The answer is 0. They told me he was the devil. They're not going to vote for the devil. They were voting for Cruz. Funny thing happened a couple days later. Cruz dropped out of the race. So who were they going to vote for once Cruz dropped out of the race? The answer is that comfortable bed over there. They weren't going to vote for the he-devil or the she-devil. They were going to vote to stay in bed. What changed? Well, there's a certain campaign over here in Israel where the Trump campaign decided they would try to get Israelis to vote. And from the very beginning, it looked a little fishy. How many Israelis can really vote in American elections? What is the point of that? Do you think we're really going to be influenced by having Trump banners in Hebrew? They had events in a few places around the country. No one came. And the Trump campaign couldn't really seem to care less. They organized an event in Jerusalem overlooking the old city walls. Trump talks about fake news. That was a fake event with a fake crowd. They didn't open it to the public. They didn't really care how many people came. It really wasn't for the Israelis who were here. It was all a sham. It was all intended for that one guy who came with a camera, who showed the event on God TV in the United States, and the other guy with the other camera that was on the other Christian television station. They were the ones who that rally was for. They wanted the evangelical Christians in the United States to feel that God says it's okay to vote for Donald Trump. They wanted to use those old city walls in Jerusalem to make Donald Trump kosher for those evangelical Christians. And it worked. They all voted. They all gritted their teeth, said their Hail Marys, praised the Lord, and voted for a sinner. And if Donald Trump doesn't move that embassy, all those votes came from a lie. Had he not made that lie via satellite here to that rally in Jerusalem, had his future ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, not said the words, if Donald Trump gets told by the Secretary of State and the people in the State Department not to move that embassy, he's going to tell them you're fired. If it weren't for those things being said, Hillary Clinton would be the president of the United States today. And so we're going to find out soon. Is Donald Trump president of the United States on false pretenses? We're going to call now to the expert on the evangelical Christians, my good friend Josh Reinstein, who heads the International Allies Foundation, which runs caucuses of pro-Israel members of parliament, evangelical Christians, and others all around the world. Hello, Josh Reinstein.
Hello. Good to be on the show.
So I was talking there in my intro about the promise that Donald Trump made to Christian evangelicals, which made them come out to vote instead of staying home on Election Day, and pretty much carried Donald Trump to victory. If Donald Trump signs another waiver, what will that mean for the Christian evangelicals across America that you know so much about?
Well, look, I think, first of all, today is a day to celebrate. The expiration date on the waiver ended last night at midnight. Even the State Department admits that the deadline was Monday. It's now passed. So according to law, the embassy will be moved. The 1995 enactment will become a law. Now, look, they can always explain it away. There are enough people who have the prerogative to try to not move the embassy that there'll be a lot of different ways of doing it. But just the fact that it's gotten this far is a huge boost to Bible-believing Christians who supported the presidency. This was a promise that President Trump didn't make to the Jewish community, but rather the evangelical Christian community in America, and he's taking it very seriously. So it's very exciting to hear what he's going to say on Wednesday.
And if he fails?
I think if he fails, people in the Christian community will feel let down. But I also believe that when he says it's a matter of when, not if, he means that. I think that he is going to move the embassy to Jerusalem eventually, because this was a promise he made to the Christian leadership in the United States. On a lot of the moral issues that Christians feel are very important, Trump does not agree with them, whether it be abortion or gay marriage or things of that effect. But on this issue, this is one issue that they can agree upon, and this is supposed to be the gift to the Bible-believing base of the Republican Party as it's put forth in the new Republican platform that, as Trump said, is the most pro-Israel in American history.
But he made a promise to the Jews, too. He promised peace in the Middle East. He has the ultimate deal about to be unveiled. Just this week, his very own son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner, said that plan is very much on the way. How can you move the embassy if you're about to make peace in the Middle East? Can't you wait a little bit for that peace to come?
No, I think it's the exact opposite. I think one of the biggest impediments to peace in the Middle East is that they've left the issue up for Jerusalem as the undivided capital up for negotiations, whereas the Israeli side has said time and time again, Jerusalem is not on the negotiating table. Well, how do you negotiate something that's not negotiable? So I think by taking this off the table and making it once and for all a fact that Jerusalem is recognized as the undivided capital of the state of Israel, you are then eliminating that issue and making a real effort to try to make peace in the Middle East. Now, again, Trump didn't promise peace in the Middle East. He said he's going to do his best to do it, but there's also a chance that peace is not attainable in the Middle East because of the situation. And I think he's being more realistic on that issue than any president in the past.
Now, we've seen reports that there is a plan that has already been unveiled that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed, revealed to Abbas when he told Abbas, come to visit me now, and basically forced him to come quickly, quite similarly to what he did to the Prime Minister of Lebanon without arresting him. And in that plan, Jerusalem will remain united, under Israeli rule. And the Palestinian capital will be Abu Dis, an Arab suburb of Jerusalem. Will that make it somewhat more palatable for the Bible-believing Christians?
Look, I think the most important issue to Bible-believing Christians is that Jerusalem remain united, but I also think that these reports that people are getting are very far-fetched. No one really knows what's happening in the negotiations, and a lot of this is just a game of positioning to put spin, to put pressure on different sides in a negotiation. I think that, Trump is literally the author of the art of the deal, and he knows how to do this, and he knows what to put out there. But what's very promising is that even in this report, Jerusalem is not on the table anymore. And the minute you take Jerusalem off the table, you can find a real solution to peace if people are willing to commit to really do what they're saying, and not just say it and say they're going to do something and not do it. But the minute Jerusalem is up on negotiations, that's the end of it, because we're never going to divide Jerusalem. That's something that's been stated. That's what the people of Israel has agreed. And I think for Bible-believing Christians, they understand that the division of Jerusalem is not a political issue. It's a biblical one.
Now, unfortunately, they're not the only religious people in the area. There's also Muslims who have threatened World War III if the embassy gets moved. Do you believe that?
Look, I think that no one needs an excuse in the Islamist community to attack Israel. We just went through the knife intifada 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, and there was no moving of Jerusalem and the embassy. I think that it's being blown out of proportion, and I think that this President Trump is not going to be the type that gives in to threats easily. I think when you threaten him, he becomes even more resolute in his decision. And, the battle for Jerusalem has been waging since 1967 when we reunited it, and I know the Israeli people are willing to fight for it if they have to.
Let's hope we don't have to fight. Look, I said on the BBC yesterday when they asked me about these threats coming from Palestinians, from Arabs elsewhere, about World War III, I said my 5-year-old threatens violence when she doesn't get her way. And I don't give in to her, and I hope the President of the United States doesn't give in either. But I got to tell you, I'm very skeptical. 6 months ago, he signed that piece of paper saying at the time that he thought that it could get in the way of making peace in the Middle East, and nothing has changed since then. Still, we don't know what is going to be in that peace plan. And he's been willing to basically thumb his nose at the people who elected him before. How can you be optimistic that this time around he's actually going to be nice to the people that I don't think he particularly cares about? I don't know if he's planning on running again another 3 years, but he doesn't seem to be that loyal to the people who got him in.
I disagree completely on that issue. I think that Donald Trump has been incredibly loyal to his base. I think the things that he's done over the last 9 months, whether it be banning partial birth abortion or electing Gorsuch as a Supreme Court justice, to a lot of the different policies he implemented, being able to say Merry Christmas instead of Happy Holidays again, is all to show that he keeps his word and that he's standing with his evangelical base. Now, it could be that he doesn't move the embassy on Wednesday. It could be that he's just going to make a statement that he believes that Jerusalem's the undivided capital. It could be even less than that. But the fact that he let the waiver term lapse without signing the waiver is a huge thing in its own. Legally, according to the law, the embassy now will be moved to Jerusalem. I mean, he might be able to explain his way out of that, but the minute you let that waiver lapse, it's a done deal. So even that in itself is showing that he's very serious about the issue. And we'll just have to wait till Wednesday and see what's going to be this big statement that he's been building up for. I know that Bible-believing Christians around America are super excited about what's happening with President Trump, especially here in Israel.
Recognizing Jerusalem as the capital could be even bigger than putting a different sign on a building in Tel Aviv and a different sign on a building in Jerusalem 6 months ago. To his credit, although he did sign that piece of paper, he did at the same time visit the Western Wall, which no sitting president ever had before, really recognizing it as a Jewish holy site, which is so obvious to Jews and Christians around the world, but it was not the policy of the United States until then. And so in the end, what we got 6 months ago was actually bigger than a Jewish site in technical East Jerusalem before 1967 was recognized by Trump. And if he would now recognize it as the capital, that could be even bigger, no?
Look, I don't think there's anything bigger than moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Some people can say, oh, look, it's symbolic, but people follow symbols. You know, when the Berlin Wall came down, that was the end of the Soviet Union. When Saddam Hussein's statue was toppled, that was the end of Saddam Hussein. When they moved the embassy to Jerusalem, it's going to once and for all put it out there that the city of Jerusalem is the undivided capital of Israel and recognized by the biggest superpower in the world. This isn't just an issue now where Israel says it's its capital and the world says no. Now the world is going to have to understand that this is our capital. And when that happens, that's going to be a sea change in the Middle East. And so I think it's going to happen eventually. I don't know if it's going to happen on Wednesday, but just the fact that some of the things that you mentioned, the fact that he let it lapse, the fact that he went to the Kotel, the fact that on his itinerary, when he came to Israel, said he's going to be speaking at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, Israel, these are incredibly huge events that are a nod to the Republican base, the evangelical Christian, Bible-believing Christian base that elected him, because he promised it, and he's one of the few presidents that we've seen in the past who actually keep his election promises in an unparalleled way.
That's really beautiful, Josh. I've come out of this conversation feeling much, much better than I came into it, and I hope that's true for our listeners all around the world. Thank you for coming here on our show.
Thank you, Gil. Thanks for having me, and look forward to celebrating the embassy move whenever it happens.
Me too.
Take care.
And after the break, we are going to be talking about something that we like to eat here in Jerusalem this time of year. Stay with us. And we're back here on Inside Israel Today on the Land of Israel Network, on the landofisrael.com. In the first part of our show, we spoke about Jerusalem, and we Jews believe that you have to put Jerusalem at the top of your joy and at the top of your radio show. And so that's what we have done. But at the bottom of our show and at the bottom of our bellies, around this time of year, the calories on our bottoms, we have our Sufganyot. Sufganyot are jelly donuts theoretically, but it's become so much more than that. And they're not really popular in America yet, and that must change. In America, when people think about something that you eat on Hanukkah, they think about latkes, potato pancakes. That's nice. It's basically some fried mashed potatoes. Okay. That's okay to have as a side dish in one of your meals among those 8 days. But Sufganyot are something to cherish. From the moment that the holiday of Simchat Torah ends, that night already, in bakeries around Israel, we have our delicious, amazing donuts. And some of them are indeed full of jelly. That is the most common variety. The second most common variety is caramel, known here as ribat chalav, the milk of the jelly or the jelly of the milk, whatever. Both very wonderful tastes, but it's become so much more. We've got our chocolate, we've got our vanilla, we've got our custard, we've got our crème pâtissière, and other French additions to the Israeli palate. We've got more creative places. Roladin, a chain of bakeries, has alcohol in their Sufganyot. I went to a place called Kadosh, which is a very popular restaurant in downtown Jerusalem, and there they have something called cassis, which is like a grape-ish, raspberry-ish kind of fruit that was very tasty. They have out the door people waiting in order to get their Sufganyot there. at Kadosh, doing an article for the Jerusalem Post about the wonderful varieties of Sufganyot that you can get here in Israel. And it's been a pleasure going around from bakery to bakery in order to try the wonderful Sufganyot that there are. I was supposed to go to 8 places, ended up in 10 in the end. Why limit yourself to 8 when you can have 10 different bakeries, Sufganyot, here in Jerusalem? I'm opening up just because it's so fancy. If you go to roladin.co.il, you can look at the fancy Sufganyot that they have here. Green Queen, a cream of pistachio and white chocolate covered with pistachios and almonds and creme mascarpone. Coffee crust, creamy espresso amaretto covered with chocolate and the crust of almonds. Choco Chic, chocolate cream covered with crunchy chocolate balls. Whipped cream, Choco Party, cream chocolate covered with colorful, like M&M kinds of things. What is this with a syringe inside? Pecanilla, creme pâtissier covered with white chocolate, pecans with a caramel chaser. Really, really fancy stuff. And ending over here with red kiss, a red kiss with a cream of red fruit. Doesn't say which red fruit. Covered with amarena, creme mascarpone, meringue kisses with a chaser of raspberries. Wow. Have I made you hungry yet? You can't get this stuff in St. Louis. I don't even think you can get this in Paris. This is very special, and you can get it only here if you live here in Israel, and kosher with so many varieties. Only here in Jerusalem, the Sufganyot capital of the world. Now, this, of course, happens because God freed the Jewish people from a religious persecution way back when. At the time of the Maccabees, the Greeks had defiled the Holy Temple over here, and a lot of Jews were giving in, and they were assimilating. And Yehuda Maccabee and his brothers said, no, we're not going to tolerate this. We're not going to let it happen. And the Jews ended up fighting the Jews. The anti-Hellenists fought against the Hellenists. This was a civil war. And the more observant Jews who wanted to fight the Greeks rather than give in to them won. And found that little one unimpurred cruse of oil there in the Holy Temple. And in order to commemorate that miracle, in order to thank God for saving the Jewish people, we're supposed to eat oily foods on Hanukkah. And so it doesn't have to be potatoes in oil. It can be Yolo Gold cream chocolate with golden flakes of gold, all kinds of fancy, yummy, delicious donuts. That's my way of saying thank you to God for keeping the Jewish people alive, ladies and gentlemen. And I think God would be very happy if people around the world come here to Jerusalem and eat these donuts and acknowledge his miracle. And we can only hope that the President of the United States will be a vehicle of God in recognizing the obvious that United Jerusalem is the capital of the Jewish people, allowing it to be the law of the United States, allowing the passport that my 1-year-old daughter has that says born in Jerusalem to say born in Jerusalem, Israel. And perhaps there can be another miracle facilitated by Donald Trump here in the hours and days ahead. And if that happens, we in Jerusalem will be celebrating. Not with wine or beer, though maybe a little bit, but with donuts. It's been a pleasure being with you here inside Israel today and inside my belly here today. Thank you for being with us here in Jerusalem on Inside Israel today, and have a wonderful day and a wonderful almost Hanukkah. Bye-bye.
The story of Hanukkah recalls the miraculous victory of a small band of patriots against tyranny and the oil that burned for 8 nights.
Like the Maccabees, we must vigilantly oppose religious prejudice.
A band of Maccabees who inspire us even today. They were outnumbered, they were outarmed, and yet they proved that freedom can prevail over tyranny.
When God kept the oil and the eternal flame burning for 8 days, He gave us the miracle of Hanukkah, a holiday of hope and rededication for every Jewish family.
Happy Hanukkah from the Land of Israel Network at the Land of